My next show is about Jim Oliver. He's an entrepreneur and a bargain hunter who has consequently become a book publisher. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thanks for inviting me here, Peter.
You've published this buyer's guide to factory outlets. Basically, first of all, what is a factory outlet for those of us who don't know?
A factory outlet is a retail store operated by the manufacturer, usually at his own factory, and that's where they clear out a lot of items they can't sell through normal retail channels. Items like seconds, overruns, clearance items, end-of-season merchandise, just a whole mixture of things they sell.
I see. And what basically are you describing in this buyer's guide?
Well, these outlets have always been available. Factories have had them for years. Usually they're in back street areas or in small towns like Lanark or in industrial areas, so that the average consumer maybe doesn't know where they are. And really that's what we're doing. We're just trying to make people more aware of where they are, and if you like to have bargains, it's one place where you can get bargains every day they're open in the year.
Sounds like a great idea. I guess we all want to have a bargain here and there.
For sure.
How much does this book cost?
We sell the book for $4.95.
Okay, great. And where is it available?
It's available at a number of bookstores, and it is available through our own mail order operation.
Okay, I'll show those locations later on. Sure. Before we speak more about your book, though, I'd like to get a little bit more information about yourself. You've been an entrepreneur for some time now, I guess. What's your background, and how did you ever get into this in the first place?
Well, I guess I was born into it because my father had a small country business, and he had the local general store, and so I grew up in that business, and then I got into public accounting, where I got to see about probably 250 different businesses I audited over a period of a few years. So that got me started, and then once I had that general interest, I went off and worked in industry. I worked in several different kinds of companies.
I think one of the companies that you had mentioned to me earlier was that you were a partner with Culligan.
That's right.
A Culligan dealership. What did you do there?
I ran the local dealership in Kitchener for a year.
I see. And did you find that that was worthwhile experience?
Oh, it was really a good experience. I think particularly because the partners that I had were super business people, and I learned a lot, really, dealing with a major company with international flavor. At the same time, because it was a small dealership, you had to do everything. So I even learned how to do things with my hands, fixing things to do with water softeners and different things that my wife still can't believe I did.
And where did you go from there?
So from there I went to work at my present job at Zehrs Markets, and there I'm the administrative services manager. So I'm in charge of a lot of general services, and one of those is printing. And probably because of my printing connections, that it was easy to kind of gravitate towards the publishing business.
I see. Are you actually doing printing, or are you administering the printing operation?
Yes.
In your job?
Yeah. Yeah, we print about 4 million copies a year in our small in-house shop, so it's a fair-sized operation.
Okay. Now you've also gotten involved with mail order. What's mail order all about? Well,
historically, how we got started at this was we had 2 small children at home, and my wife wanted to kind of contribute towards the family income, but she didn't want to go out to work. So I said, well, let's get a job for you to do at home. And we talked about different things. Because I was an accountant, I thought, well, I'll get you some books to do at home, or different things. And
this was primarily so that she could continue to look after the children?
Yep.
Right.
So that's how we kind of come up with the idea of mail order, and said, well, gee, we could operate our own business right out of our own home. And so we started looking around for products, and through that search, we came up with the idea of this directory, the list of factory outlets. And then using that information, I compiled the book, and my wife helped me a little bit. But for almost the first 30 months, we didn't really do very much business. Like, it was a really small hobby. We always having fun at it because we were doing it, and we were selling a few.
Hey, just a minute, before you jump too far ahead,
yeah.
Can you elaborate just a bit on how you actually thought about this idea, about this product?
Well, because I was in the printing business through my job, when we started to look at products, we had the opportunity to buy some manuscripts. We actually wrote away to one of those ads you see in one of those magazines, send $10 and we'll send you something, and so we did that. And I got 9 manuscripts. And they actually helped point us on the way, because it was like how to quit smoking, how to run a garage sale, how to buy wholesale, how to buy at country auctions. So there's kind of how-to books, and especially the one about wholesale, buying right, things like that. Came together with an idea that we actually came upon at the 19th hole of a Chamber of Commerce golf tournament. I was telling the fellows about these manuscripts, and somebody said, what you should do is publish a list of the factory outlets in the Kitchener-Waterloo area where we live, because we have quite a high concentration of them there, and it's actually quite a tourist attraction. And I guess the idea really stuck with me. I went home, I mentioned to my wife, she said, well, that's a good idea, because you know we go to a lot of them all the time. Right at that time our children were very small, and we had one place where we were buying slippers for $1 a pair. Well, when we talked about that to our friends, they all wanted to know the address. So it seemed to be a natural progression. Like, we wanted to be in a little business, and this all of a sudden was a product that seemed to have consumer acceptance.
Did you start compiling this list of factory outlets for your own purpose at first?
Oh, yeah.
Just so you knew where you would buy your next, or where you'd get your next deal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mainly just talking to friends, because they would hear us talking about the slippers we bought, and then our kids starting to skate. They said, well, there's a skate place, and then you got skates, well, you need a hockey stick, so there was a hockey stick place, and so you kind of just progressed one to another, really.
So once you finally conceptualized of the idea that you wanted to do here, then how did you get started?
I just made up the list. I took it to several of my friends at the office and said, look, here's the factory outlets I know about. Do you know any more? And they wrote in a few more, and we had a list of 36. And I typed it out, and I just photocopied it. And then we offered the list for sale for $1. Now, it was just a photocopy, and it wasn't very professional, but people bought it. So immediately we knew that there was an acceptance level out there.
A market for this idea.
Definitely a market, yeah.
Great. Now, how did you go about, okay, you started collecting the information from friends and all kinds of other sources. You started with 35 locations, was it?
They were all in the Waterloo County, Wellington County area. Okay. And as we pursued the whole book idea, we realized that if we were going to go anywhere in Ontario, we had to tackle more of the province. And of course, Toronto being a large part of the province population-wise, then we started to look for outlets that were in Toronto. We started to subscribe to the Toronto Sun, the Toronto Star. We did get the Globe anyway, so we started to look for other outlets. And then, of course, we found that there were lists of them. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce had a list, or maybe there was one at the library. So we were able to get quite a bit of information that way. You'll notice in our book that after we got publishing, we invite our subscribers to send us information. And it becomes a snowball thing. Like, the more books you get out there, the more people then respond to you. And so we do get a lot of information. And that was an interesting turning point in our book, too, because at one point we never had any great response from outlets themselves. But at a certain point, they also started to write to us and say, are we in the book? How do we get in the book? And then we started to sell advertising in the book. So it kind of snowballs, but you just have to keep pursuing different avenues.
It gets to a point where I guess you're nobody unless you're in your book.
That's right. For sure.
Now, how many of these books do you publish in a year?
We've been selling just over 10,000 the last 3 years. And actually, each milestone we came to, we moved into new heights. Like, we were selling about 5,000 a year for a while. Then we decided to go retail, because our mail order operation only reaches probably 15 to 20% of the whole population, just because a lot of people won't buy by mail. And so we went to our factory outlets and said, look, why don't you sell the book there? And so some of them did, and they started selling it right away, and so they realized there was a market. They share in the profit, obviously, because they buy it wholesale, and so they widened our distribution. And of course, the wider you distribute it, it's word of mouth helps advertise even more.
But the first time you started selling it by mail order, is that correct?
Yes.
What was your target market, and how did you even get your mailing list, just to get started on all this?
That's an interesting question, because we thought we were developing this book for the average person. And we found out fairly quickly that it's middle income people that really probably have already been to maybe Florida for a trip, and they want to go to Hawaii, so they start saving, and they realize that by buying shoes maybe at a factory outlet, they can save 50 bucks. If you can save 50 bucks here and another 25 there and 50 somewhere else, it can add up to a trip somewhere more exotic. So we were surprised that our target market, maybe the average person, buys our book. But in fact, we have a lot of middle income people, farmers, engineers, doctors, lawyers. We have quite a collection of letters that we've kept just to remind ourselves of those people. But anyways, we started advertising in small weekly papers mainly, and we put small ads in the personal sections or in the for sale section, and invited people to write for the book, really. And we always had more than one avenue. Fairly quickly we realized we had to advertise in other places, so we started to make up flyers, and we handed flyers out. We handed them out to friends. We handed them out to the outlets. And in fact, as a part of being in our book, we do ask the outlets now to at least distribute our flyers. And we probably get 75% cooperation. So that helps us a lot, really. That was why I think like some of them realized that people were grabbing these flyers, so why not be selling the book?
Right.
And we've had people convert, well, even as late as just in the last couple of months, that have been giving out flyers for maybe 5 years. And all of a sudden they say, well, why are we doing this? Why don't we sell the book? Right. And they still get their name out because their name's in the book, and they also make a profit. So everybody benefits.
So are some of the factory outlets selling your book as well?
Many, yeah. Probably 50.
Excellent. Okay. Now, do you do your own printing?
No. But I do use a printer that I'm associated with through the company I work at.
I see.
And so it's somebody I'm familiar with, and so somebody I can work with easily, and I do a lot of other printing work, so it's really nice to be able to work with somebody that you know.
I thought it was quite interesting. You had this one flyer here that you had developed. Let me hold it up. And on this flyer, you have a little ad for the book itself.
Yeah, we always thought that it would be a good idea to have the mail list, and we didn't have that originally. We didn't start that till we had a computer. We had to have some easy way to manage it. And when we got the computer, then we got lots of names and addresses compiled into it. And so at that time we were ready to announce as each new book comes out, because we do publish annually. And so we made up that flyer. Notice the coupons in the flyer. We sell those coupons, and that of course gets those factory outlets right out in front of the public again, and remind them that they're there, gives them an extra incentive to come in. But because they're buying it, they help pay for our mailing.
Right, they buy some advertising space on the flyer.
Yep.
And how much do they pay for the space?
Those coupons we sold for $170.
Well, Jim, we're going to take a short break right now, and when we return, we'll be talking a little bit more about... Welcome back to Careers. Today's guest is an entrepreneur who has published The Buyer's Guide to Factory Outlets. Now, Jim, I know that your book describes exactly where these factory outlets are located, but maybe you can give our viewers just a little bit of a hint. Whereabouts can we find some of these things? I have a map here that you gave me from the Spectator.
The factory outlets are all over Ontario, and historically factories were on the water routes, and that's why a lot of them are nestled down in where mills were. Because the woolen mills or the blanket mill or the shoe factories, whatever, did require water power at one time. And of course those factories just expanded, and they still are in those locations, whether it be over in Blythe or in the Kitchener area or in Cambridge or over in Lanark or on Prescott in the Ottawa River Valley. They are really all over, and that's why we published our guide. We do have them listed alphabetically within each geographical area, so that if they are, let's say, in the eastern part of Ontario, say on holidays, or if they live there, then those outlets are concentrated in one section of the book. Similarly, the outlets in the western part of the province, down near London, that part, we have in another section of the book, so that it really follows. It's great for a salesman. If you're traveling across the whole province, you just follow the book.
Where are most of the outlets located if you were to, let's say, add them up? Is there a real dense area, for instance? Is it Toronto, or is it?
There's probably two main areas in the province, and Toronto is one of them because there's just so many people here and so many factories. But there's also a very good concentration of in the Waterloo, Wellington County area. That's Guelph, Cambridge, Kitchener-Waterloo area. And they're very easy to get at because the population there, the factories are quite a bit closer together and you can zip around.
In fact, you were telling me earlier on that some of these outlets attract more tourists than Oktoberfest.
The Chamber of Commerce took a survey in Kitchener area just to see where the tourists were coming from. And of course, because Oktoberfest is such a big thing there, we got a lot of response to do with that. But they were really surprised to find that because the factory outlets are there 52 weeks of the year, they really draw more tourists in total than any of the other single events.
Okay, let's see some of these products that are available at the factory outlets. I guess you were going to show one of these Arrow shirts.
I bought this shirt especially to bring down today because I thought it'd be nice to have one right in a package. But I went over to the Arrow factory. It's a good example of how the whole factory outlet scene has expanded because they've actually gone from a back room sort of operation when they used to operate in their cafeteria just on Saturdays to now when they're open 6 days a week. And this particular shirt has a suggested retail tag on it of $27.50, and at the factory outlet I paid $12.50. So that saving of $15.50 I can take anytime. I really like that. So it's a great way to save some money.
Yeah, it really is. If you buy a few shirts in a year, you can save a lot of money.
That's right. Notice this is even a modern color, right up to date. So it isn't necessarily really old stock or anything like that because they're having items that are put into the outlet all the time.
Would some of them have defects in them, or
Definitely.
are there other reasons why?
Oh yeah, some of them definitely have defects, and the more defect it is, like more obvious the defect, the more the markdown. So they actually have shirts, I think on the one rack it's $2. So if you don't mind shirts with different colored sleeves, and maybe if you're if you're working in a job where you're in a factory or something, that wouldn't matter.
That's true.
Type of thing.
That's true.
So that they really do get into some pretty weird situations. But a buttonhole can be just a little off center, and that could make it a second. And if it's covered up with your tie, who's ever going to see it? Or there's all kinds of ways that seconds are graduated.
But in the case of the shirts, wouldn't they already be packaged when you get them? So would you be able to really see the defects?
Any of the very small defects would be packaged. But if it's a big defect, they actually put them on hangers and they have them on a rod. So you can see them, really. And you can usually ask at most of the outlets what the defect is. For example, in one shoe outlet, they circle the actual defects with a white piece of chalk. And you can actually see that it's maybe the stitching that they judged was not right, or it's the eyelet that's a little off, or that the sole didn't adhere quite right, or whatever. It tends to highlight the difference. Most items that are sold in the factory outlets have only cosmetic problems, though. And if it's a cosmetic problem with a shoe, for example, I've worn a shoe one day, and I've caused more cosmetic damage anyways. So I feel that's really limited reason not to go there.
I'm amazed at the wide variety of different products that are available from some of these factory outlets, though. You've got shoes here. You have even Sara Lee Cakes. What can you tell us about those?
Well, basically anything that's manufactured can have a factory clearance center somewhere. They pretty well have to. Now with Sara Lee, can you imagine how many chocolate cakes they would make in a shift? Like they make up to 50,000 in an 8-hour shift. And the biggest problem they have is getting the automatic icers working smoothly. It's nothing to do with the baking, like their baking operation is all automated. The thing is that with humidity variation, temperature variations, getting that automatic icer to put the icing on smoothly is essential for the average shopper getting something out of a supermarket shelf wants it to look perfect. But really, when you eat it and think about it all, how important was that icing? And so in the outlet, Sara Lee sells these, and they usually mark them. In fact, I understand from them that one of their biggest problems is a lot of small business people, small grocery stores, go and buy a lot of seconds and take them back because they can buy them cheaper than they can buy wholesale. and they take them back to their store and sell them. So that's why Sara Lee marks them, so that you can see that, really. So usually mark it with a big S.
Okay. Before we go a little bit further, maybe you can just define exactly what a second is. There's a bunch of different terms that you've mentioned. Second, I guess, overrun.
A second is something that's not a first being total first quality. A second having some slight variation. The variation can be any number of things, really. And if it's anything to do with stitching, if it's anything to do with matching up two different kinds of material, it can be a slight flaw in the material. There's just a huge number of reasons why an item will be a second. One thing today that is often a second is a mark that's occurred during manufacturing. Let's say somebody had a dirty hand and they put a fingerprint on a shirt. Well, that's not a first anymore. Okay. But it's really only necessary to wash it. But once they've washed it, they can't sell it either as a first, probably. So they don't even wash it. They just sell it that way.
I see.
And a lot of merchandise is marked. And that's why I say a lot of things are cosmetic. Now, some of them are damaged cosmetics, some of them are just dirt.
Is there a typical discount that you can usually expect on these items?
The discount varies according to the quantity they have to dispose of. But it does vary in wide ranges, anywhere in some outlets from 20-30% markdowns to 70 or 80% markdowns. And I think, like you saw in the shirt example, like that was over 50% markdown. Does vary.
And when you go into one of these factory outlets, is it much like walking into a store? Can you just buy things off of various different racks and then pay for it with your MasterCard or Visa or by check?
Most of the outlets are set up like a retail store, but more like a bargain store. And things are piled on tables often, and you go in and you can do a bit of rummaging, and you see that variation from outlet to outlet. And some of the bigger outlets, they're just like a regular retail store, except they usually don't price the merchandise right on it. Usually there's a big sign up on the wall somewhere that says if it's V, it's $12.50. If it's W, it's something else. And so they have different kinds of pricing systems in different stores.
And now your booklet does show where some of the best bargains can be had and what kind of discounts they can typically expect at those
Every
locations.
year we solicit information from the outlets trying to get their latest information. What products are they offering this year? Has it changed at all? Like, are they making new things? Have they discontinued any things? At the same time, what savings you can expect, and they give us indications, might be 20 to 70 or something like that. They traditional outlets never used to allow charge cards, but today most of them seem to have charge cards as well as cash. But some of them still are old-fashioned and don't take charge cards.
Great. Now, where can people get this book?
Well, essentially our book is a mail order business to start with, but now we offer it in many retail stores, and Can Do Bookstore in Toronto, world's biggest bookstore in Toronto. Live and Well, Green Gables Books in Markham are good examples. But there's many other stores in this area that have it as well. Those are good ones to get them at.
Now, you also mentioned that if they can't get it from one of these stores, that they can get it directly from you through mail order. Is this where they get it from?
That's our address. It's in Cambridge. If they mail to Cambridge, the price is $6.43, including the tax and handling. And right now, if they mail to us, we also give them the coupon sheet you were showing. Anybody that mails for a book.
And there they can get some extra discounts.
That's right. Up to $40 worth of coupons in that particular sheet.
Okay. Before we sign off, have you got any advice for some of the entrepreneurs out there who are watching and may be interested in doing some research and publishing some kind of a book about the research findings that they've made?
Well, I think anybody that goes into their own business, it's good to start small and work up. And in that sense, it's good to start in a hobby sense so that you can get a feel for it. It's good to meet all kinds of businesses, other business people, so that you understand what some of the problems are out there, because there's a lot of variation. And one of the things everybody should do is buy books about their own kind of business they want to go into, because they help them immeasurably with all kinds of little hints. One of the first things I read was, don't make a whole lot of books. before you've sold them. So we used to make only 50 books at a time when we first started.
I see. Jim, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you for joining us on Careers. It's been a pleasure. We'd like to make use of your ideas. If you have any comments or suggestions, please send them to me at the following address: Peter Wolfl, care of Graham, Cable TV, Channel 10, 35 Scarlett Road, Toronto, Ontario, M6N4J8. I'm Peter Wolfl, and from all of us here at the studio, good luck in your own career.